Welcome back, artists. I'm Wyatt Paints, and I love Hypnotoad. Futurama is one of my favorite animated shows growing up, and kinda still is. So when I was thinking about making a new decoration for the apartment, I knew exactly what I wanted. I'm gonna be aiming for a surrealist style, kind of like those images that came out a couple of years ago of real-life Pokemon. You know, they were all semi-realistic, but really off-putting. And as a bonus to my fundamental painters out there, this one's gonna be brush only. You will brush, Hypnotoad. With that said, time's a-wasting. I'm gonna head over to my painting table. Let's get started. Now, this file came in two pieces for ease of printing and also so that the head can turn and rotate. So to preserve that, I resized the neck post for a friction fit. That way, when I put him into position to pose, he'll stay that way. As typical, I'm going to start with his skin using dark flesh. Now, normally I would start with the darkest tones and highlight up, but since Hypnotoad is a cartoon, hard and fast rules kind of go out the window. Also, with the surrealist style, you have quite a bit of leeway when it comes to interpreting your subject. I don't have too many bold ideas for this one, so I tried to focus on the foundation for now and make the harder choices later, because sometimes the biggest hurdle in painting is starting. I find once I get going, the decision paralysis tends to go away. Once the throat and upper chest were painted and dried, it was time to address the rest of his skin with earth. If you remember the Crypt Keeper boss, highly textured skin like this will seem very thirsty for paint. What's important here is to resist the urge of throwing tons of paint on at once. Doing so won't really get you any better coverage and just end up clogging the finer details. Here you can see I'm treating it like a very wet dry brush, using Old Bristly here. I'm not trying to be clean or fancy here. Just get the paint on and spread it as much as it'll go before I reload. After 2 full coats and some time in front of the fan, Hypno was looking ready for some skin details. For that, I turned to Oak Brown. I went hunting for Hypnotoad pictures for reference to his markings and realized we have only ever seen Hypno from the left side. All the other images of him looking to the right are actually just a mirror image. So while I roughly matched the pattern on one side, the other side was sort of a blank canvas for me to just wing it. And I do think I was successful in keeping it consistent with the other side. One speed bump I hit was when I got to the face markings. At first, I tried to replicate the cartoon, and that first attempt looked very off. So I kept on enlarging the area more and more and letting it evolve. And once I got to covering about 40% of the face, that's when it actually started to look good. I realized this is pretty far from the source material, but that's what interpretations are for, to be my version of it. With the skin fully based, it was time for some shading, starting with light tone for the throat. Now, I gotta say, I have been loving this wash more and more lately. It's already become my grimy teeth secret weapon, but I just find myself pulling this bottle out more and more often. But if it works, it works, and here, it worked like a dream. I did have to go back to add a little bit more in the deeper grooves, but as usual, light tone did the work and I just moved the brush. Next up, sepia. Now here, this was kind of an oof for me. This is actually a new brand of sepia wash, as I usually use Citadel washes, and I wasn't prepared for how strong the tone would be. I really should have thinned this down first because it ended up normalizing the skin to brown a lot more than I wanted. It shifted down so hard that I couldn't see any of the skin markings from earlier. But as they say, hindsight is 20/20. I'll have to keep that in mind in the future and put out a caution for all of you. If you use this brand of sepia, you'll most likely want to thin it down a bit. I followed this with taking care of the collar in violet. There wasn't much to this, just a bit more focus than before to ensure brush control and prevent any overspill onto the skin. I then gave it a quick highlight with Grimoire Purple. This is more of an edge highlight using the belly of the brush and the raised surface detail. That way there's no need to overthink it, just a quick few swipes and then I moved on to the buckle. Which got a basic gunmetal and a rough highlight with shining silver. Hypnotoad would like to thank my subscribers over on Patreon. Their continued support pleases Hypnotoad. He also commands you to like, subscribe, and leave a comment of your undying loyalty to Hypnotoad. Now for the main focus of Hypno, those crazy eyes. Beginning with olive for the base. Here this color is mainly just so I'm not trying to paint vibrant greens over black, which is a giant pain. So I just slap this on and let it dry. Next up, livery green. As you can see, even with a green undercoat, this bright green is struggling to get full coverage. It took me about 4 coats to get it to a saturation I was looking for. Again, many thin coats do a much better job than 1 or 2 thick coats. Patience is your friend. Once that was looking good, light livery gave me the next step up. This time, I'm only covering about 70% of the eye. This is the start of the transition to yellow, which is notorious for its coverage issues. So getting a good bed for the yellow to sit on is a must. Just to make sure I had a whisper smooth transition, I brought out Big Flute. Makeup brushes like this let me get buttery smooth transitions on rounded surfaces. Then I grabbed lemon yellow for the final highlight. This ended up being the perfect yellow to match with the intensity of the light livery green. I'm focusing the color here only on the top 40% of the eyeballs, and once again, Big Floof came to shine and made this pretty trivial. I then lined each eye with green wash, almost like deep green algae eye rings, which I think fits, because I don't think Hypnotoad ever blinks. For the final detail of the pupils, I'm using a black paint marker to make this as hassle-free as I can. The best advice with pupils is to start small and enlarge as needed. That's why here I started with just 2 dots in the center where I wanted the eyes to be looking, and slowly expanding them. Remember, adding paint is easy. Taking paint off is very hard. I finished the pupils with a few accent dots that just seemed to make sense to me, and I called it done. And you know what? I'm pleasantly surprised how this turned out. While there are a few things I would change if I painted this again, like thinning down my wash more, or maybe even leaning more into more cel-shaded style, I think it was a success in capturing the look and essence of Hypnotoad without being a one-to-one carbon copy. At the end of the day, if you can look at a piece and instantly recognize it, you were successful. And in that respect, when I had a friend over recently, the first thing they said was, "Cool Hypnotoad." So it works for me. What do you all think? Be sure to leave your input in the comments below. And if you would like to try this model out, I'll leave a link in the description. Lastly, I know this was a short one, but I needed it to make up some time for the next projects because they're pretty intensive paint jobs. So be on the lookout for that. Until then, thank you for watching, stay creative, and always enjoy the process.